facilitate that, but we need an easy, universally accessible path to citizenship for everyone now. Essentially, you only have two other options. The first is keeping them as they are now, in a shadow society that lives in fear, that's completely separated from mainstream society, that has no protections under law, that works for the most exploitative businesses, that has little opportunity for advancement. We could install a guest worker program or something like that, but all that does is institutionalize this population as a subservient class of workers. It legitimizes that. So we oppose any sort of program like that, and we oppose the sort of thing that the Republicans are saying. What we oppose, in its essence, is the very distinction between legal and illegal. We oppose the very distinction between citizen and non-citizen. The other option, which Arizona and some other states seem to want to move towards, is to try to get them all out. And I don't think we really need to go over why this is bad. You know, I used to live in Phoenix, and I've seen how much fear is in those communities. They're the most fearful communities that I've encountered in the United States because of their laws. And that's why I wonder, is Ron Paul okay with letting Arizona carry on those laws? But anyway, both of those options are absolutely immoral. Our current immigration system is absolutely immoral because it does not go to the root of what is causing people to come here. And the root of what is causing people to come here is not welfare. It's not because they're going to get a welfare check or they're going to get free housing. It's because there's vast inequalities on either side of the border. That's why people come here. People come here because when they work for an hour here, they can make more than working in an entire day in Mexico or in Central America or wherever they come from generally. So, once again, we have a moral obligation to open up the border and to let everyone here now have a way for citizenship, if they want to.
Thank you, Aggie Solidarity. Democrats, you have time for a 30-second rebuttal.
Well,
Okay.
we cannot just open the border. The United States is entitled to its sovereignty, and there is a process. What we offer are viable proposals which take from both sides. So this is a compromise. The immigration blueprint that we have put forth is a compromise, taking issues that we don't necessarily like. I don't think we should force people to learn English. But if that's what it takes for the other side to agree to it, then we're willing to do that.
Okay, thank you. We'll move on to our second immigration question. Living here in the border area, as was mentioned in our introduction, issues of immigration status are things that are much more salient for many of us than maybe in other regions of the country. We also live in an area with many mixed status families. That is, one example might be a family where parents are undocumented and citizen children were born in this country. In a case where parents are picked up for removal from the United States, what some people refer to as deportation, but removal from their home country, should citizen children be taken into account in that process? Aggies for Ron Paul?
You got it?
All right, okay. The first part of your question with regards to children being, what was it, children being taken?
We have mixed status families where we have parents who are undocumented and children who are U.S. citizens.
Well, the 14th Amendment also in the Constitution grants citizens that they were born on our soil and they are American citizens.
Okay, so, but just to clarify, the question is really if the undocumented parents are picked up for removal from the United States, should the fact that they have citizen minor children, be taken into account in that removal process?
I think no one's goal is to break up families. A lot of this has to do with getting these illegal immigrants I don't think the solution is this black and white deportation. I don't think that we should just, if we find an illegal immigrant, slap the cuffs on and fly him back. And I think that we need to focus on how we can help these people become part of this society on a legal basis. You know, if they come here and they've started a family and they've built a life here, although I think we need to work on creating a system and reforming our current policies to make it easy for them to become part of our society, and so they don't have to leave their children here or take their children back to Mexico with them, so they can stay here and become tax-paying, legitimate American citizens.
Okay, Aggie solidarity.
Well, first we would like to ask a question, especially to, I guess, everybody out there. Would any of you be willing to take a child's parent away from them just because of their legal status? Like, if there was a family in front of you, would you be willing to tell them, like, sorry, you have to go back? Oh, and additionally, you might have to go as well to the children, or either we're taking away a birthright from what we pride ourselves on as we're violating the Constitution in that sense. And additionally,
Well, and additionally, you know, Ron Paul actually wants to take away birthright citizenship. So what you just said really kind of contradicts with what he says. You know, sorry to tell you, but mainstream Republicans and Ron Paul will use the term anchor babies, right? So, and that really just shows how much of a process of demonization is really going on this population. And so, once again, we don't just oppose breaking families up. We oppose the idea, and the arbitrary idea, that there's a difference legally between the parents and the children in the first place. And we just want to remind everyone too that all of what we're saying, when we say open the borders, we know that is a radical, that would create a crisis. We know that that's going to happen, and that's exactly what we believe needs to happen in order for us to address the roots of the problem. So everything we're going to say tonight requires a radical transformation of the economy. We just want everyone to keep that in mind.
Thank you. NMSU Democrats.
I think that both of these groups have absolutely, none of us want to break up families. I do have kind of a different situation. I have a friend in high school who thought she was a legal immigrant here. Her parents came here. When she applied to college, she found out that she wasn't a legal immigrant. And this has been addressed. I think that we need to work on the system we have right now. We need to work within the government, not against it. We need to make these corrections, and we've seen this in the DREAM Act that was proposed by President Obama. And it did not pass, and the fact that it didn't pass is kind of dehumanizing to these people. And I really think it's just a sad, sad issue, especially seeing it with my own eyes, of seeing it happen to a friend.
Right, and our goal is not to break up families. The Department of Homeland Security goes after criminal aliens or other categories that are called ICE priorities. Those are people who are repeat offenders, who are felons. We are not breaking up families. Nobody busts down the door to take mom and dad away. So those citizens do have a right to stay. You can't deport citizens. And Immigration and Customs Enforcement only goes after people that fall into that category. Over 90% of removals are people in those categories.
Okay, a rebuttal.
I just want to make one thing very clear, is that we are here sitting at this table not representing Ron Paul. We are not here to talk about presidential candidates. We're here to talk about our own political views. So while we obviously are supporters of Ron Paul, it doesn't mean we agree with 100% of everything he says. And we are not here to show that we are representatives of him. We are representatives of ourselves, and we're here to talk about politics and our political ideas and views and the way we see it, not the way he sees it. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to our third question, focusing on issues of immigration. This question focuses broadly on issues of civil society and immigrant inclusion. And I guess I'm interested in having you address two issues in immigrant communities. One of those is the Secure Communities Program, which is supported by the present administration. The Secure Communities Program, for those of you who are not familiar with it, is a program where everyone who is arrested, for example, or who goes into the criminal justice system is fingerprinted, and their information is sent to Homeland Security to see if they fall into any deportation or possible deportation category. There are also 287G programs. 287G programs are specific programs that are signed. These are agreements that are signed between Homeland Security and local law enforcement officials, which allow local law enforcement officials to function as representatives of Homeland Security, in essence, for immigration issues and to ask people about their immigration status. And I wanted you to address what your position is on these programs and the potential effects that these programs have on immigrant integration, which you mentioned as being so important, and the development of civil society. Aggie, solidarity?
Well, first of all, the campus Democrats just mentioned saying how ICE prioritizes getting rid of convicted felons or hardcore felons, which is not true, and there's plenty of data and statistics out there that most of the people that are being deported because of the Secure Communities Program, a majority of them, actually a high percentage of them, are second level or third level, have committed second level or third level crimes, which end up being a year or less sentencing. And additionally, there's even a small percentage of people that have been deported who actually are documented. So this, I think what the Democrats are saying about it being working to clean out, pretty much clean out the good and the bad. This is false. It's a lie. I actually have an uncle who was arrested for he was undocumented, of course, actually, and he was arrested for a minor altercation and then eventually deported. Just pretty much, my family is from Michoacan, Mexico, which is pretty far south down, and he was just pretty much dumped right along the border. And he was 60 years old with liver disease, and he's going blind. And right now, my family is dealing with how to handle this right now. It's become a burden on all of us. And so I think that in that sense, the Secure Communities Program is completely flawed. And again, we are completely against this whole. Back again, we're against the whole idea of categorizing people as legal or illegal.
So we're not only against secure communities, we're against the very idea of there being an ICE.
Yes.
Period. Special units that enforce them. Just watch over them.
Okay, Aggies for Ron Paul. I'm not sure when we start throwing things. You guys can brief me on my role.
So this is actually, I'll admit, it's a topic that I have not personally looked into very much. One of the downsides of getting these questions about 20 minutes before this starting. I think that any law enforcement officer, when detaining a person committing a crime, has the right to check the identification of that person. I don't think a law enforcement officer has the right to stop anyone and check their immigration status based not on a crime, just off the street, I think that's ridiculous. But if a person is arrested, I think they do have the right to check that identification. I don't, however, like the idea of sending a database of information on people to Homeland Security. I don't think that the federal government should keep tabs on every person that's in our country. I believe that we should have our privacy, and we have the right to our privacy and our freedom. And if a local law enforcement officer detains a person and can determine that that person is an illegal immigrant, that person should then be dealt with by Border Patrol and handed off to the proper person. But fingerprints going to Homeland Security makes me nervous, at least. Is that right? Is that secure communities? Is that what we're talking about? I apologize. I actually do not know.
No, I mean, that's part of a whole series of issues. In terms of the relationships between the federal government and federal immigration enforcement issues, and then agreements with local governments. NMSU Democrats.
In response to Aggie Solidarity's accusation of our facts being incorrect, I would like to point out that not in this debate, not in the last debate, Aggie Solidarity has not cited any sources. And although this isn't a declared Lincoln-Douglas debate where there's a proper way to cite, still a debate, and we have been citing our sources, and I just would like to throw that out there.
And once again, to clarify, secure communities only applies to people that have been arrested for a crime. It's not just fingerprints of everybody off the street that gets sent to Homeland Security. It's people who have been arrested of a crime, and ICE, again, they go after aggravated felonies. An aggravated felony is murder, rape, sexual abuse of a child. It's not shoplifting or double parking. These are serious crimes and people that need to be removed from this country. So I can't speak to, there are some certain situations where people fall through the cracks, but in large part, secure communities works. Law enforcement officials from across the country have said it works. The National Sheriff's Association supports secure communities. And in large metropolitan areas such as Los Angeles and Salt Lake City, the sheriffs are in support of this system.
Yes, actually, if you want to look for that information and that data, you can look at on the website for the Department of Homeland Security.
And then I just want to address a couple other things too. That the idea that the people that we're deporting are all hardline criminals and everything is ridiculous. We've got prisons filled with tens of thousands of people who have done nothing other than cross that arbitrary line in the sand, other than move. And then furthermore, I would also like to ask, Aggies for Ron Paul. I mean, you guys talk about the Constitution a whole heck of a lot, and I'm just wondering, if the Constitution says that only the federal government can enforce immigration law, and so you're saying that you would rather have the local government instead of federal government, but what happened to the Constitution, baby?
They addressed us specifically, Aggie Solidarity's addressed us.
Okay. Yes.
Any private citizen or law enforcement officer should be able to enforce private property rights. I'm not saying that the local government should be involved in immigration policy. I'm saying that if a person trespasses onto private property or breaks the law on any property, the local governments and the private citizens should have the right to uphold the law of the land. I also did want to remind them that we did state that once it is determined that it's an immigration issue, it should be passed back to the federal government. So.
Okay, thank you. I think because we have so many issues, I could spend the rest of the evening torturing everyone with immigration questions. But I'd like to move on to some other issues, other important issues in foreign policy. And I'd like to start out with a question focusing on Iran and its nuclear capacity. There are plans for upcoming talks between Iran and the United States, the UK, Russia, China, France, and Germany. These are reportedly scheduled for mid-April in Geneva. So this is a critical, some people consider this a critical opening to restart negotiations on Iran's disputed nuclear program. What should our position be on this issue? At what point should the U.S. intervene, if at all? Under what circumstances? NMSU Democrats.
The situation in Iran is not a grave threat to regional stability. It's an issue of importance that needs to be dealt with politically, but it's also an issue of distraction. In the 1990s, Huntington Class of Civilizations came out. This warned of the terrible dangers of potential Indian and Pakistani nuclear bombs. A few years later, they were there, and what happened? Nothing. We saw a similar situation happen in North Korea. I think the foreign policy records of Republicans have used the same predictable, petty, and diverse attacks. Then they come from the same tired political playbook. These strategies have made our country less safe. They're dated policies, and they're brought forth again and again, and they're responsible for some of the most disastrous set of foreign policy decisions that we saw in the last administration in the history of the United States.
Okay, Aggies for Ron Paul.
Well, if you look at this administration and the past administration, Barack Obama has caused more war than George Bush. We're in Libya now. We're gonna the drum beats are going into Syria. Now, and also too, you gotta look at like Uganda too. I mean, there's drum beats being there for there too. What we need to do is have a non-intervention policy when it comes to warfare. What you do as a constitution, you go to the people, and then you go to the Congress, you get a declaration of war, and then you sign it. We haven't declared war since World War II. You know, everything else has been a police action. So it's Democrats along with Republicans that have been pro-war. So that's basically it. And also too the economics of going to the war, you know, going to wars too. It brings into debt. Both parties have had a fault of that. This pro-war agenda.
Aggie Solidarity.
Pretty much, why are we so concerned with Iran right now? Pakistan has a bomb, India has a bomb, Russia has a bomb, and Israel is undeclared. And then while the U.S. has nukes all over the world, and then what moral right do we have to say who can and who can't have one? Why wouldn't Iran want to have a bomb, especially since the U.S. has them all around, to the east and to the west of them. And at the end of the day, for the U.S., this is all about economic access and what we perceive as threats to our authority. So basically, we just need to butt out.
So it's nice to agree with Aggie's Ron Paul on that.
Okay, do you have a rebuttal statement?
Just a gentle reminder that President Obama has ended the war in Iraq, and there is a plan to withdraw from Afghanistan within the next few years.
I'm feeling the tensions up here. I'm glad I'm over at one end of the state. Okay, although I think that obviously we could continue talking about Iran and some of these other issues which are important, but yet on the other side of the globe, there are scholars and critics who have said that a lot of recent policy has really neglected our relationship with Latin America. There are a number of tensions between the U.S. and Latin America regarding proposals for for free trade agreements, a lot of tensions there. What I'd like to focus on in this next question is the war on drugs and the violence that has been provoked by the U.S. war on drugs in various parts of Latin America, including actually quite close to us here at home, right across the border. Vice President Joe Biden